Either get a job or get out. I'm sick of supporting a woman like you. My husband's words hit a nerve, and something inside me snapped. Why should I put up with someone like this? A man who belittles others to bask in his own superiority. I'm better off without a man like this. My name is Melissa. I'm 36 and I balance work with homemaking. I'm a freelance illustrator working from home. I've always loved art and went to art college, and after graduating, I worked at a design company. When I turned 30, I took the plunge and went independent. I wanted to express myself in the way I like, doing what I love. Back then, I was single and thought I could live life on my own terms. But then I met my husband Daniel through a mutual friend, and we clicked. We decided to get married smoothly and registered a year later. Daniel's company has branches all over the country, and he travels a lot for his job as a salesman. Because he works long hours, he wanted me to be a housewife, so I temporarily paused my illustrator career. Sure, he works late and travels, so someone has to manage the home. I thought we should support each other as a married couple, so I didn't mind quitting my job. I figured I could resume my art career later while continuing my studies in the meantime. I think so. I loved him, and he loved me. We trusted each other, so there was nothing to complain about. But then, life threw us a curveball. Daniel got promoted to head a new sales office, meaning no more transfers for a while. It was what is commonly known as a promotion. Being in charge meant that I would not be transferred for a while, and we could settle down in that city. Now we could finally settle in one place. We had been moving a lot and were exhausted from adapting to new places every year or so. But now we could finally settle down in one town, and we were both happy about it. Before, I was so busy supporting my husband that I couldn't think of anything else. But I thought things would be different from now on. Going back to work seemed within reach. But it didn't go as smoothly as I hoped. My husband was still swamped with work, handling the transition and launching new branches. Then another issue came up. The cost of rent in our new city was higher than we expected. We could get by on my husband's salary, but just barely. And his company didn't offer housing assistance, so we had to cover it all ourselves. We wanted to save for the future, but his salary was barely covering living expenses. I considered dipping into our savings if needed, but it didn't feel secure. So I asked my husband, would it be okay if I worked too, provided I managed the house well? He looked hesitant, and finally said, fine, but make sure you take care of the home. His choice of words felt off, but I've always supported him as a housewife. I thought he must also feel uneasy about the lifestyle changes. I decided not to dwell on it. I finally have a job I like. I was excited to go back to work after all these years. But my husband started to change, and not for the better. What's the deal with this dinner? It's roast chicken, steamed vegetables, chowder, and fruit. This food sucks. Why are you cutting corners when you're home all day? He started to nitpick the meals I prepared, something he never did before. This food is like hospital meals. It's not building up any strength. That's not true. I found some deals on ingredients, so I made a main dish and a side you like. Hearing that, he shouted, What? Are you saying my salary is too low? I felt stunned by his sudden outburst. Why was he twisting my words like that? His angers left me speechless. Do you have any idea how hard I work to support you? Just when I get promoted and things are looking up. Don't mess it up by doing something unnecessary. I wanted to argue back, to catch my breath and think before speaking, but I stopped myself. My husband must be going through a hard time right now. He's swamped with the stress of being the one in charge and the responsibility to protect our family. I'm sorry, I apologize. He must just be tired, I convinced myself. Still, his domineering attitude continued. Hey, are you slacking on cleaning the bathroom? Where's the shirt I was gonna wear today? At least shine my shoes. He never acted like this before we moved. What happened to him? It's like he became a different person, constantly yelling and shouting. Day by day, my distrust for him grew. Balancing housework and my job was harder than I thought. I wanted to sneak in work between house chores, but if I tried to make everything perfect to his standards, housework alone would consume my day. If I tried to meet the deadlines set by my clients, the spare moments I had for chores were nowhere near enough. I've also started working, Can't you help a bit with the chores? I suggested, but he retorted, It's because you're busy with your worthless job that the housework is suffering. Just quit. Don't get cocky just because you work from home. You're not even making much. And you, acting so high and mighty even though you're just a housewife. Being disparaged as just a housewife became his go-to insult. According to him, I was still a housewife, even if I was working. What twisted logic. I didn't get it. I wasn't making much, that's true. But that's because he kept disrupting me, making it impossible to increase my workload. Fed up, I minimized the chores I did for him and started prioritizing my work. And then he started looking even more visibly displeased. The rift between us continued to grow. Then one day, while cleaning the room, I stumbled upon his pay stub. So careless to leave it lying around. The pay stub was carelessly placed on the desk. I was somewhat curious and picked it up. I knew his salary, of course, but I had never seen the pay stub before. Curiosity got the best of me, and I was shocked when I looked inside. When I checked the amount on the pay stub, it was about half of what I'd been told before. What's going on? I receive monthly living expenses and rent from my husband, and the rest is his pocket money. Where is my husband getting the missing amount from? Wasn't he supposed to have gotten a promotion? How can his salary drop like this? Since when? I searched for other statements, but couldn't find any pay stubs from before his promotion. What's really happening here? At that moment, my vague distrust towards my husband turned into certainty. We can't live on this amount. What is he thinking? Why did he keep this so critical from me? Why didn't he tell me his salary had gone down? Just as I was gathering the pay stubs to confront him, the phone rang. It was from my husband's uncle, whom I'd only met a few times. Uncle, long time no see. What's up? Well, it's awkward to bring it up, but you see, I've lent him some money. It's been a while, and I'm wondering when I'll get it back. I'm in a bind over here. What? He owes you money? Then it clicked. My husband had been filling in the gap in his salary with loans from his uncle. Turns out, we're talking in the tens of thousands. I sincerely apologized to his uncle and promised to repay him. Even though I felt terrible, the uncle didn't blame us and kindly said, "Just pay it back when you can." I've reached my limit. That night, I didn't mention the debt or the pay stubs, but my anger towards my husband slowly and steadily rose. He's belittled me for being a housewife, exploited me around the house, and even interfered with my work. That night was no different. He continued to berate me. When will you ever get good at household chores? The food's terrible. The entryway's a mess. What have you been doing at home? Another useless job, I bet. Being a housewife must be easy. Doesn't he realize his words contradict themselves? I cook and clean just like anyone else. If you're not happy, then why don't you do it? You've been coming home on time lately. You can handle it. When I pushed back, my husband slammed his fist on the table. You! When did you become such a mouthy woman? Don't get carried away, you waste of money! Do you even know who's providing for you? I didn't back down. What's so mouthy about standing up for myself? I'm doing my part. What about you? I glared at him. I don't have to put up with this man anymore. Whatever he says, I don't care anymore. I spoke my mind. He didn't back down either. You pretend to be working around the house, but never actually do. Start earning, then talk. I thought the same could be said for him, but I remained silent. Should have never married you. What a money pit you've turned out to be. You keep saying, we don't have money, so why don't you earn some? If you're not going to work, get out. I'm tired of supporting a woman like you. He looked at me triumphantly. It sent a shiver down my spine. He must have thought I'd apologize, but I was ready. Fine, I'll leave. I grabbed my already packed bags and started to head out. You can't do anything on your own anyway. Why do you think that? I gave him a cold look. By the way, I'm leaving this. I've already filled it out. I slapped the divorce papers I got from the city hall onto the table. He must have never expected I'd leave, let alone file for divorce. He was speechless, standing still. Well, that settles it. Make sure you fill it out and send it soon. I left our home and headed to my parents, where I had already informed them of the situation. They welcomed me warmly. My husband's sudden change of attitude, the income being way less than he claimed, and the fact he was in debt? Hearing this, my parents urged me to divorce him immediately. I intended to, of course. But would he even fill out those divorce papers? Dad said he'd introduce me to a lawyer if I couldn't get a divorce. I thanked him for his reassuring words, hoping that I could end my marriage as soon as possible. A week after I left home, my husband showed up at my parents' house. "Did you fill out the divorce papers?" "Sorry, I asked if you filled them out." "Please, can you reconsider the divorce?" I was a bit taken aback. He didn't seem like the arrogant man I knew. Though my parents looked at him skeptically, they agreed we should at least talk, so they invited him in. Turns out I never got promoted. His promotion was a complete lie. He was actually reassigned to a subsidiary, a kind of demotion, and that's why his salary decreased. It seems he's never been particularly good at his job. I had sensed he wasn't too competent, but I had no idea it was this bad. Apparently, his transfers and job changes had always been a result of his inability to work well, making him the office's hot potato. Now, he was stuck in an insignificant department in the subsidiary, a place from which promotions were virtually impossible, and where people often got pushed out. My husband always had high pride. I guess that's why he couldn't tell me the truth, and pretended to get a promotion. After losing his standing at work, he started to inflate his ego at home, believing he was superior because he was providing for a housewife like you. He would belittle me and sabotage my work just to sustain his pride. I took your absence to realize that you were earning quite a bit. Before leaving, I deliberately left a copy of my bank statement in his room. Though I earned less than he did, it was still a substantial amount to support our living. I realized I need you. I can't even afford the rent on my own. I think we can make it work if we combine our strengths again. So let's give it another try. I want to spend my life with you. I won't make you suffer anymore. Tears formed in his eyes. Feeling completely indifferent, I brushed him off. If you can't afford the rent, then just move. You can find cheaper places if you're alone. And what about your uncle's debt? You have to pay it back, right? When I said that, his eyes widened. How did you know? He was still trying to hide his debts and start over. You just can't reason with some people. I get that you were making ends meet by borrowing from your uncle, but if we're talking about starting over, shouldn't you lay all the cards on the table? My dad chimed in after I spoke. You've been so dishonest. I can't imagine letting you have custody of our daughter anymore. What were you planning to do about the debt without telling her? My husband didn't say a word at my dad's comment. I continued, pressing the issue. If you won't agree to the divorce, I'll hire a lawyer. Your abusive comments are clearly grounds for a divorce, and I have evidence, so brace yourself. My husband seemed to give in and pulled out the divorce papers from his bag. I've really messed up, beyond repair. It's too late now. We're strangers. I took the divorce papers from my husband. We hardly had any shared assets, just a small amount of savings that we split. We moved out of the apartment we had lived in as a couple, and I heard he quit his job. Apparently, the rumor of our divorce spread at his already uncomfortable workplace, making it even more unbearable for him. He said he's been paying back his debt to his uncle slowly, while working part-time. After the divorce, he reached out several times. I want to start over with you. Nothing's been going well since we split. I realized you were the only one on my side. Can we... I got creeped out by his constant pleas for reconciliation and changed my phone number. If he had just put his pride aside and been honest, maybe we could have understood each other as a couple. There's no way I'm forgiving his abusive behavior, and the love has long since faded. I silently walked away from him. Afterward, I resumed my career as an illustrator in earnest. I'm busy, but every day is so fulfilling. A bright future waits for the newly free me. Right now, my job feels like my lover. Who would have thought that that moment of courage and decision would change my life so much? It's my one and only life. I'll live each day to the fullest, with no regrets. I looked away from my computer screen and gazed out the window, thinking just that. Hey, where are you right now? I've been sleeping at home. Sleeping at home? There's no sign of my husband at our home, where I am now. He's lying to me. The story goes back to when I was pregnant with our first child. My name is Ashley. I was finally expecting our first child in our second year of marriage. Just 1 month to go until my due date. I'm 9 months pregnant. While I'm excited about the birth, I can easily imagine the confusion of going through childbirth and child rearing for the first time. So I had planned to go back to my parents' house this weekend to have them help me out for a while. I mentioned the idea of going back home to my husband during the stable period of my pregnancy, but I thought he had probably forgotten, so I brought it up again today. Then, while lazily watching TV, my husband said, "Going back to your parents? Oh, I think you mentioned something about that. If you're going, why not just go? I'm not going to have any trouble without you here." What the? I was taken aback by my husband's dismissive words, but I didn't want to start an argument, so I decided not to push back. "Well, I'm going back this weekend. I'll be giving birth next month, and I'm planning on staying for a month or two afterwards, so I guess I'll be back in about 3 months. Please make sure the room is clean and ready for the baby." All right. I would have done it anyway. Oh, and I can't see you off this weekend because I have to work." Oh, alright. I had hoped at least he would accompany me to the station, but that hope was quickly crushed. I knew he was a workaholic. He often goes to work even on weekends, always seeming busy. But I wish he could spare a thought for how difficult it's going to be for me, heavily pregnant and carrying a lot of luggage, to navigate the trains. And while I understand that he's busy, I do get lonely sometimes. I don't want our baby, who will be born soon, to feel lonely. Moreover, I have been feeling anxious about whether we will be able to raise our child together at this rate. It's not just my child. When did he become so cold? With these complex feelings, I started packing. Since there was still time before I went back to my parents' house, I decided to send my luggage other than valuables by home delivery service. I, who had been hoping to welcome the baby to a clean house, had cleaned from corner to corner when I started maternity leave a little early. They say that women develop a nesting instinct when they become pregnant. I had prepared a baby bed and secured a space for the baby, and I was excited about starting a new life as a family of 3 when I came back in 2.5 months. But my sloppy husband kept dirtying the places I had cleaned. Maybe I was the one to blame for cleaning too early, but regardless, he seemed to have not lost his sense of living alone at all. He would leave half-drunk bottles of drinks scattered around and left cardboard boxes used for packaging the stuff he bought online, opened and left unattended. Come to think of it, I realized that I had never seen my husband cooking or cleaning since we got married. Despite the fact that I kept tidying up, things were only getting more disordered, and I started worrying about whether the house would be okay while I was away. But then again, the time of childbirth was imminent. The weekend arrived in a flash, and I headed to my parents' home. On the other hand, my husband really went to work without seeing me off. While relaxing at my parents' home, I was keeping in touch with my husband fairly well. We had email exchanges every day, and I would call him about once every 3 days. But gradually, my husband started not answering my calls more frequently. When I asked him, "You haven't been picking up the phone lately, are you busy?" During the rare times I got through, he started giving vague responses, like, "Well, yeah," or "Not really." "You're not cheating on me, are you? I heard that many men cheat when their wives are pregnant." "Nah, why would I do that? It's annoying to be doubted." On the phone, my irritated husband made me feel cautious, and I quickly apologized, saying, "So, sorry." It's not good for mental health to have such unnecessary worries while nurturing a precious child in my belly. I must trust my husband. I decided so. Then, a few weeks later, my labor pains started. While I was preparing for admission to the hospital, I called my husband. I felt embarrassed to show my pained expression as I endured labor, but I wanted him to be there at the moment of birth, at least. Surely, my husband would also be moved by the birth of our child. "The labor has started. It usually takes about half a day for the first child to be born, so you should be able to make it if you start now. I want you to be there at the moment of birth. See, you can even cut the umbilical cord." When I said so, my husband let out a sigh of annoyance. What? You want me to come by train right now? Sorry, I'm tired too, so I can't. I have work tomorrow too. What? You're still talking about work, even at this time? Our child is being born, you know. Is work still your priority? Shut up. There's no replacement for my job. This is the moment our child is born. It's not going to happen again. Like I said, there's no replacement for me. If I don't do it, the work won't go around. Can't you understand that? I'm cutting the call because I'm busy. I tried to persuade him somehow, but my words did not resonate with my husband. As I was cut off on the phone, I shed tears while enduring labor pains. Why is my husband so indifferent to our child's birth? From the moment a mother finds out she's pregnant, she puts her child first. But is a father so indifferent? And so, I faced my first childbirth alone, in solitude. The labor pains lasted for a full day, and a cute little boy was born the next day. Such a tiny, cute, and beloved existence. After getting discharged, my parents showered the child with love while teaching me various things about childcare. By the time a month flew by, I had become adept at bathing the baby. My parents expressed their concern, saying, "Are you okay with such a husband? We can't help worrying about you after we go back." But not wanting to worry them, I tried to reassure them, saying, "Well, I think I can manage somehow. My health is recovering faster than I expected, so maybe I'll go back next week." "Really? Don't push yourself. Let us know immediately if anything happens." "Yes, thank you." They often say that a postpartum body is like that of someone who has been in a car accident. But thanks to hormones, my spirits were high and my body was recovering steadily. I was also getting used to taking care of the baby, so I decided to go back home a little earlier than planned. While I was being cared for at my parents' house, there was hardly any contact from my husband, and even when I sent photos and videos of our son, he didn't show much reaction. I guess a parental heart probably sprouts as one actually raises the baby, and perhaps a sense of being a father wouldn't come up until he interacts with the baby. That's how I thought. I was trying to keep myself going with that thought. I decided to have my parents drop me off at home. I didn't tell my husband that I was coming home, but he should be at home since it's his day off today. I wondered what his reaction would be when he saw our child for the first time. Would my child like our home? After a few hours' drive, we arrived home. I carried my son while my parents lugged our luggage, and I unlocked the door. But what welcomed us was a dark and silent room. "We're home! A bit early, but we're back." "Hey, no one's here? Ugh, what is this smell?" Entering the living room, a foul odor hit our nostrils. Turning on the light revealed a sight I hadn't imagined. The room was in a state of disarray, reminiscent of a garbage dump. Dirty dishes and half-eaten pizza were stuffed in the sink. Clothes and food and drink trash scattered about. Half-drunk juice had mold floating in it, emitting a strong odor. The table was covered in stains and dirt. The shower room and sink were filled with black mold. The toilet was dirty and stunk. And in the crib we had prepared for our son, there were piled up unused cardboard boxes and garbage bags. I had told them to keep it clean for welcoming our son, but the reality was far from clean, and I was shocked. There's no way we can live in such a dirty house, and above all, I was most upset about the crib being soiled. "Hey, isn't this too much? What's going on?" "There's no way we can raise a baby in a place like this." My parents were furious and searched for my husband, opening each room. But my husband was nowhere to be found. Where could he be on his day off? Another weekend shift, perhaps? But we don't even know if his previous shifts were true. He's not on a commission basis, so working on the weekend doesn't increase his salary, and his company is supposed to follow the calendar. I had honestly been doubting him always disappearing on the weekends. Let's try calling him. There was no way we could stand in such a cluttered room anymore, so I evacuated my bewildered parents outside for a moment and called my husband, but he didn't answer. Finally, my husband answered the phone when I called for the third time. "Hey, where are you now?" "I was sleeping at home. Why?" At home? We had searched the whole house, but neither my parents nor I had seen my husband. Could he possibly be buried in a mountain of trash? But we couldn't feel any human presence, and his tone didn't sound like he had just woken up. Then I heard a woman's voice over the phone. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but it was definitely a woman's voice. At that moment, I realized everything. This man, he's cheating on me. I can't believe he would cheat on me while neglecting our child. The house was a mess while we were gone. He was cheating on me, and I was furious. A father like this is unnecessary for our son. I'm fed up with a husband like this. If he likes the other woman so much, then I'll let him have her. How can you live in such a messy and rotting smelling house? Oh, I get it. Maybe a burglar came in? I need to report this to the police. Huh? You're at your parents' house, right? What are you talking about all of a sudden? My anger escalated at my confrontational husband, and I raised my voice. You're the one lying about sleeping at home, aren't you? Stop playing dumb. It's absolutely unacceptable to turn the crib into a garbage dump. I'm not coming back to this house. We're getting a divorce. I said this rapidly and hung up the phone. After that, I actually reported to the police that we were victims of burglary to punish my husband. I told my parents and son to go back to my parents' house first, and I waited for my husband in front of the house. Then the police arrived before my husband did. I invited them into the house as if I were welcoming guests, and soon after, I saw my husband coming this way. Unbelievably, there was a woman walking alongside my husband. My husband approached me with a face that seemed to say, "This is bad." Hey, you! You weren't supposed to be back until next month. But who is she? The woman standing next to him was glaring at me, arms crossed. And who are you, for that matter? What? In spite of running into his mistress, I felt strangely calm. I decided to ask the woman some questions. As it turned out, my husband had been meeting her while concealing the fact that he was married. I was so disgusted with my husband that I didn't know how to react anymore. Hey, at least hear me out. My husband tried to grab my shoulder in a fluster, but I slapped his hand away, not wanting him to touch me. Don't touch me. It's repulsive. The police are checking the room right now. I hope you feel embarrassed having them scrutinize the mess you've made. I'm leaving now. You can explain to the police. Goodbye. Leaving them with a parting shot, I headed back to my parents' house, leaving my husband and the woman in a daze. There were numerous calls from him, but of course I did not answer. I finally decided to respond that night. Apparently, he had explained the situation to the police, and he returned home with a troubled look. The police, pinching their noses against the foul smell and struggling to move around the room, must have been quite embarrassing for him, but he brought it upon himself. After being dumped by the woman he had been lying to, all that was left for my husband was his shame and a house in shambles. Come on, I'm sorry. Come back. I've been looking forward to seeing our son. If he truly felt sorry, he should have at least come to my parents' house. Thinking that he can apologize over the phone and everything would be fine shows what a terrible person he is. I can't imagine spending the future with him. Even though you never showed any interest before, you suddenly care? You weren't even there when I gave birth, despite me asking you to come several times. Well, I thought you knew that I would. I'll clean up the room. I can't do household chores without you. I need you. I can imagine my husband getting more desperate and breathless on the other end of the line as I continue to reject him. No matter how much you beg, it's not happening. You should have kept that woman. If you can't handle housework, have her do it for you. But that was just a fling. It was a momentary lapse. You're the only one for me, Ashley. A fling? Weren't you seeing her every time you said you had to work overtime? Well, that's, different. I pressed my husband, who was mumbling incoherently, and he confessed that he had been cheating on me with multiple women from his high school that he had reconnected with at a friend's wedding party. He's a scumbag either way. There's no point in talking. I started to feel chills listening to my husband desperately apologizing in a voice close to tears. I can't believe it. You disgust me. Were you planning to touch our son with those hands? Unthinkable. I won't do it again. I'll come to pick you up right now. I want to see you and our son. I'll prove my sincerity. Let's go home together. I couldn't believe what I was hearing from my husband's defiant voice. What is he thinking at this point? I can't trust you. There's nothing more to talk about. I'll raise our son on my own. Ashley, please, forgive. I hung up without hearing the rest of his words. The sound of the call ending echoed emptily in my ear. And so, our short marital life came to an end. Half a year has passed since then, and I decided to start working, relying on my parents. Once I've saved up enough money, I intend to leave my parents' house and start living on my own with my son. I am in the midst of divorce negotiations with my husband, mainly for the sake of alimony. Having limited experience living alone, my husband is apparently unable to manage household chores, and most of his meals are from dining out, leaving the house in disarray. However, that's no longer my concern. I will do my best, expressing my abundant love for my son.